Hello, good day. I hope this finds you well. My name is Jill Kufalk. I am a Technical Assistance Coordinator with the Wisconsin RTI Center, and I'm going to be partnering with Ed and Val from CISA 2 and your district administration team to work through some next priorities that you have in terms of data inquiry and equity. Before we meet on June 17th, Ed and Val and I are asking for you to do a small bit of preparation, which includes listening through a few minutes of this video. Actually, I've tried to keep it under 15, and then doing a little bit of reading and preparing based on that reading so that we can really build upon that as we move into our time together virtually on the 17th. I want to make note that this PowerPoint is also going to be included in the email, so you can refer back to it. And the links hopefully will work. The reading that we're going to be asking you to prepare for or with is linked here on this first page, as well as a couple of other places, and it's embedded in the email. So with that, I want to just introduce the Wisconsin RTI Center in terms of our vision and mission. I'll let you go ahead and read that. And what we are wanting to focus in on is the capacity building component of what we do. We are here to work ourselves out of a job in terms of being your support by helping you develop and sustain an equitable multi-level system of support to ensure the success for all students. So we are really going to be supporting you at systematically providing those equitable services, practices, and resources to all students based upon their responsiveness to effective instruction and intervention. Since 2017, August 2017 as a matter of fact, we have revamped our framework. So for any of you that were trained or involved with the center or the PBIS network prior to that, we do have a revamped framework that really is content neutral. And that framework does, what we do is we take our reading and math, response to intervention, and continuum supports, as well as our PBIS behavior supports, and we weave them together into that framework, and braided within that is our culturally responsive practices. So that is so that we're looking at a more integrated model of an equitable multi-level system of supports. I also want to just make note of a few of the acronyms that we tend to use in the field, just so that we are naming things as we state them. So these are some acronyms that you may or may not use in Waunakee, and we'll definitely be talking about that as well. Also know that there is a link to our website in terms of some of our other terms. We also want to be really grounded in the vision of college and career readiness and turning it into actionable implementation of that equitable multi-level system of supports. And in doing so, we always want to keep students at the center of our work in terms of the knowledge, skills, and habits that we want to have as non-negotiable guarantees that we provide students opportunity and access so that they are college and career ready. And in doing so, when we do this systems level work, we're actually going to be turning our focus onto the adults, the adult practices and the systems, organizational components that need to be in place so that this is really what happens for each and every student. They are college and career ready. This is the graphic of Wisconsin's vision for an equitable multi-level systems of support, and you may or may not be familiar with this newer graphic. There are 11 key features, and I'm not going to go through all of them. What I do want to make sure I make note of is that we look at the fact that equity is at the center of this framework. And what our purpose is to challenge and change inequitable access, opportunity, and outcomes experienced by learners currently being underserved in Wisconsin schools, and in particular, Waunakee Community School District. So we're going to really be focusing in on that in this first set of learning through the June 17th date. If we were to take a microscope and look down into that equity circle in the center of the framework, we would see this. So what we've done is unpacked that model to inform the framework through this model to inform culturally responsive practices. And this is actually what we are going to be asking you to dig into to prepare for our June 17th day together. So what this model to inform does is it describes the beliefs, knowledge, and practices Wisconsin educators, schools, and districts need to reach and teach diverse students within their culturally responsive, equitable, multi-level systems of support. It's really important to note it's not a checklist or a toolkit. Rather, cultural responsiveness is a way of being and knowing. It's how we show up to do the work of schools. So how do we do that work? In the model to inform, we're going to see three sort of pieces or components. The first component that we're going to be learning about is the will, which is really the desire to lead. I want to acknowledge that all of you watching this right now and participating in this series of learning with us and partnering in this work are not at the beginning of this journey. We are picking up from lots of different places that you have been embedded in terms of learning about equity and culturally responsiveness. What I also know is that we never can lose sight of this one part. The will is always something that we need to continually come back to. It's a becoming self-aware. And so I almost wish that it said becoming instead of become, because we are never fully self-aware. As we grow and learn, when we know better, we do better. So that's where we'll be sort of beginning some of our learning together, but also acknowledging that we are going to be looking at the fill, which is that knowing of the communities, gaining that cultural knowledge, and then the skill. And I know that in your school district, you're already doing all of these three parts of this model to inform. Again, it's not a linear process. We move back and forth sort of throughout this circular cycle of learning. And we also sometimes move from one part of the circle to another and then back again, but really always grounding in the will. So this is another graphic that I think is really helpful for you. I'm going to take just a moment to pause and let you look at some of the characteristics or features of each of the three components of the model to inform. As you read through this, I want to make note that the second bullet under the will part of this graphic is that it is best developed collectively as opposed to individually. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. This is not the work that is best done in an independent study. While there will be a lot of independent self-reflection, we will be doing this learning and collectively developing the will to lead this work. And I also think that that brings us to an important component of when you read the model to inform, or reread it if you've already read it. I'm going to ask you to review it if you've already read it before. That we really take a look at the two different kinds of change that we're going to be addressing in this systems level work, and what Ed and Val are going to be helping move us through in the process of looking at our data and making some decisions about next steps in terms of technical change versus adaptive change. And for many of you, you are well versed in these terms. Those technical changes are very important. They're nothing to lose sight of, and in fact, they can be very hard and resource heavy and dependent. What's unique about technical change is that they're typically hierarchical in nature, sort of so a decision maker says, you know, this is how we're going to do this, and then we do that. They're not going to be embedded in a lot of change in values, beliefs, or roles and relationships. They're a little bit more concrete. We might say cut and dry. That the opposite, not the opposite, but the other hand of that, the adaptive change component, is when we start to move into requiring changes in values, beliefs, roles, and relationships. And the unique component about adaptive change is that it takes a collective group of lots of stakeholder voices, including students and community, in order to move that adaptive change forward to inform that work. It is less concrete. It might be called messier, so to speak, And it is often, almost always, going to take much longer than a technical change, just by nature of the way that we're going to go about those changes. So there are steps in the technical change process, there's tools, there's essential components, whereas in adaptive change, we're asking questions. We're saying, how can we help our school reach more students, and how can we be more responsive? So instead of changes that we might be able to see, these are changes that we're going to feel as we move through this adaptive change work. And that's going to lead us to needing some agreements so that we can talk about things that we've been conditioned not to talk about, that aren't comfortable for us. And as you read through this model to inform, and as we move into the June 17th time together, I'm going to ask that we really adhere to these 4 agreements. So think about how you might notice moments of discomfort and stay curious, both with yourself and with others. How might you notice someone else is feeling discomfort? How are you going to listen fully with your ears, eyes, and heart, and in particular in a virtual environment that adds a whole new level of the way that we show up to engage? We are going to ask that you are open to experiences and each other, and especially understand that we are going to accept but expect non-closure. So there are going to be times, and often learning days, where you are going to leave with more questions than answers, and that can be really frustrating, and feel like we're not moving, or we're circling, or we're not really getting anywhere. So we always want to be prepared for that, and we will be driven by sort of goals and outcomes, so we know that we are moving forward. And lastly, it's going to be so important that we create a safe space where we can speak our truth and hear others' truth without blame or judgment. That is the only way we can learn together, which is going to be critical for us. We have to identify the why that we are here. And the why we are here is really a hard thing to take, to hear. These statements give me a lot of feelings of discomfort. Wisconsin has the country's worst inequities between children of color and their white peers, and unacceptable national and state data trends in behavior and academics. So we have to identify the current state, and this is our current state, and we're going to be looking at the current state within Waunakee Community School District, and that is going to be hard. And that is hard, and I know that's not new. I know that's work that you already engage in quite frequently, but we're going to add another layer to it, and Ed and Val are incredibly skilled at bringing teams through this work. I'm not going to show the video, but I do want you to know that if you'd like to watch it, this is our State Superintendent Carolyn Stanford Taylor, not only stating that this is her passion, but stating that this is the state's priority. This is the work. If you are a to-do list writer, this is on the top of every one of our to-do lists every day, that we are engaged in this work as educators and leaders. So it is the work. It's the work, and I commend you for being here and listening today and getting ready for the 17th. As we want to ground ourselves in the work, we need to think about our own self-reflection. I'm going to ask you to take a moment to think about your family traditions that you grew up in, or that you now have, who your friends are, who they were as a child, who they are now, the experiences that you've had and that you've learned from. This is going to be part of the journey, because we know that cultural responsiveness is not a destination. In thinking about that, we all operate from 4 quadrants within our humanity. We have our believing selves, our values, our mission, our vision, what we're driven by in our beliefs. We have our feelings, our emotions. We have our thinking, cognitive piece of us, and we have our acting, our actions, our doing. And I want you to think for a moment, which of these quadrants do you tend to live in most often? Is there one that you're most comfortable with, or a couple that you kind of vacillate between? Is there a quadrant that is more uncomfortable for you, or a little bit more challenging for you to stay in? They're all important, and we're going to talk about how they all apply to this work. So what we're going to do is ask you to do some journaling before the 17th. so that you can begin to help with the journey of why you're here in building the will of that becoming self-aware component. I want to just make note of the RTI Center values. We believe that today's decisions and every decision we make is an equity decision. So we believe that today's decisions must be made in the context of both today and tomorrow. We need to ask, how will this decision affect the future of Wisconsin schools, students, and our own organization? We know that the best decision provides the best end result for our schools and students. And we also believe that positive change means the whole educational community must work together, focusing resources on improving student success. I want you to think a minute about the values that are either written or unwritten in the Waunakee Community School District. Is there a value in the school district that aligns with one of the values in the center? Now I want to have you think a little bit about your professional and personal values. Does one of these center values ring true, feel like you're aligned with? Does one make you feel a little questioning or some discomfort? We're going to be starting with values and beliefs. And it's going to be really important that we identify the values and beliefs we personally hold, that we professionally bring, and who we are sort of working and speaking on behalf of, which is the Waunakee Community School District students, families, community, and staff. So we're going to be talking about where the values land. So here we are. Your preparation for June 17th is to spend about 30 minutes after this, between now and June 17th, that morning, to first create a journal entry like we just spoke of in whatever format that you would like, something that you can continue on through this journey. And we want you to spend a little time sharing your story. So I want you to think about where you are in your journey in terms of thinking, believing, acting, or feeling. And then I want you to journal a bit about your family, your culture, your upbringing, your experiences, and begin to investigate your why for being a part of this collaborative work together. Know that this is a personal reflection tool. It will not be shared or turned in, but is really a place for you to capture your thoughts and notes. We may ask you to refer to it as a tool as you share with others, but it is nothing that you would ever publish or have to share or show. So it really is your personal self-reflection. I do hope you take some time, even if just 5 minutes, to spend in self-reflection after listening to this. Then we also want you to read the Model to Inform, which is linked on this slide, on the first slide, and in the email that you received. And as you read through that, think about where you're landing in terms of thinking, believing, acting, or feeling as you read through the document. And lastly, we're asking you to complete the form that is linked here and also in the email prior to June 17th, which is basically just a text rendering protocol to help you sift through the Model to Inform, and then also to provide some aggregate collective data of where we are as a collective team in terms of the reading. The form is anonymous. No emails will be collected. It's not a test. It's simply a way for us to begin to process what this means for us individually and what this means for us as leaders in education and contextually for Waunakee Community School District. I am so excited to meet with you. Ed and Val and I can't wait to partner with you in this work. You are our teachers and learners. We are in this together, and please email me if you have any questions. My email is linked. Tim always knows how to get a hold of me, as do Val and Ed. Otherwise, we will see you on June 17th. Thanks so much for listening.